What I'm going to do today is speak very broadly, right, for law school, med school, professional school, MFA, and I'm going to try to talk about, no matter which one you're going on to, some ways to prepare for that, and then also what the packet is going to look like and parts of the procedure. What I want to strongly recommend, especially for those of you thinking about law school and med school, is getting involved with the Barrett pre-law and pre-med resources, and then also joining one of the student organizations that works for pre-med or pre-law, and they're going to take everything I'm talking about today to an even deeper level, and we'll talk some more about those places when we get there. So, okay. So I'm going to give a lot of information to you in the next hour, and by the time you leave, odds are good that like your head will hurt. You're going to kind of be like, oh my gosh, it's extremely overwhelming. Hi, come on in, go ahead and grab a sheet. And I want to preface everything I'm going to say right now with this preemptive statement. As kind of overwhelming as the process can seem when you're first getting started, it's doable. People do it every year. People successfully take themselves through the process every year, and this just gives you some sense. Last year there were over 800,000 master's degrees earned, over 179,000 doctoral degrees. That includes med degrees. So what that tells you is this is a doable process. It can just be a little overwhelming when you first get started. So what I want to talk about today is making sure you kind of understand the whole process and starting to marshal your resources and prepare yourselves as best you can so that you're putting in as strong a packet as you can when the time comes. So before we get into the details of particular areas, let me just lay out for you, if you're going to go past your Bachelor of Arts or your Bachelor of Sciences, what you're earning in the years that you're here as an undergraduate, there are a couple of different directions you might be heading into, and sometimes it helps to sort of clarify those. So there are a number of degrees that are master's degrees, and they are what we call practitioner degrees. You want to become a therapist, you're going to earn either an MSW Master of Social Work or a Master's in Counseling. For people in art, the MFA, the Master in Fine Arts, that's what they call a terminal degree. I'm not sure if you can go past that for a doctoral degree in arts, fine arts. You couldn't previously, but that may have somewhat changed. So an MBA, a Master's in Business Administration, these are postgraduate degrees you're going to get. Hello, Dr. Ramsey.
Hello.
Because you want to be a professional in the field, and it requires you to have a master's to do that. Those master's degrees are a little bit different than what we would call a research master's degree. You adore biology, and you're going to go get a master's in biology, and you hope that you're eventually going to get a PhD in biology, because you want to become a researcher and you want to become a professor. So one of the sort of distinctions to make is, are you going after a degree that allows you to be a professional in a field, or are you going after a degree that starts you on the path to becoming a researcher and the path to eventually becoming a professor or a faculty member? Past the master's level practitioner degrees, there are doctoral level degrees that you will need if you want to practice in a particular area. So if you want to become a doctor or a pharmacist or a veterinarian or a lawyer, you have to go beyond that master's level to some level of doctoral practitioner degrees. So pharmacy, medicine, doctor of osteopathy, I forget what that is. Juris, doctor.
Okay.
This is where you become a lawyer, you become a JD. No, what's this one? Physical
Physician assistant?
Perhaps, yes, thank you. Doctor of veterinary medicine, etc. Those practitioner doctoral level degrees are just a little bit different than the research doctoral degree. Again, say you adore English, you got a master's in English, you get a PhD in English, odds are you're going to become a researcher in the field, and you're going to go on to become a professor in those fields.
Wow.
This gets a little funky for doctors who become medical doctors but then also become professors. I'll be really honest, that process is extremely confusing to me. So when you're in like your third year of medical school, ask people how that happens and they can sort of fill you in at that point. Dr. Ramsey, was there something you wanted to add?
I came with Dr. Watros so that we could say that, because we've been to graduate school, at least for a research doctoral degree, that anyone who wants to stop by our offices as well after they do this, we'd be more than happy to help them.
Great.
But Dr. Watros and I have another engagement and wanted to know if we could be excused.
Yes, you can. Thank you. Your presence will be sorely missed. We enjoy having you. Goodbye. So again, if you're already sort of started out on a career path, this may be real clear for you. But if you're just getting started, or Kathy, I'm thinking in your case, forensics is a pretty new area.
Yeah.
So we're really going to want to hear from faculty on what they have to say. And I just want to share this resource with you. Learn how to become, how do I become, and what this is you can go to this website, and there are any of a number of careers, and you simply type it in, and especially for those of you who are doing a lot of career research at this point, utilize the site, type it in, and what will come up is the full educational path that you need to follow, the types of internships or cooperative experiences they recommend, etc. So, this is a very mundane piece of advice. Go out and buy a 3-ring binder right now. Don't store this stuff on your computer. There is something about having it in hard copy. And this 3-ring binder is called my graduate school binder, or my med school binder, or my law school binder. And every time you come to some place that gives you information you want, you could bookmark it on your computer. My strong advice, print it out. Remember, you have free printing services in Barrett. There's something psychologically about having it all contained in one place with tabs for easy reference that makes the whole process of both researching and exploring. And then when you start to figure out the programs you're interested in, printing out what makes them unique, their descriptions of themselves, and then also printing out things like calendars. When are you going to have to sit for the MCAT? How much is it going to cost? And then sort of keeping files on each of the schools to which you're applying. Yes, you'll be doing a lot of this on your computer, but computers have been known to go bad. All right, so, and again, there's just something, when I was applying to graduate school, I had an enormous thing, and it sat on my desk, and there was something about going, in the midst of all the other crazy, oh right, I'm going to graduate school, and everything I needed was right there. So it just also serves as a really nice physical reminder. What schools do you want to go to? There's a number of ways to start researching the reputation of schools. You can find out what their national rankings are. In law and medicine, that's pretty easy to find, everybody knows. In something like forensics, well, it's a newer field, and people, so I'll talk about some ways that we can find out what the national rankings are. Do not choose your schools solely on their U.S. News and World ranking. Okay, U.S. News and World ranking, yes, in law and in medicine, super great if you can get into one of those. But the other thing to look for in a grad school is, do they have some kind of emphasis or specialty area, which is exactly what you want to do. And I'll give you an example. Sandra Day O'Connor is not a top 10 ranked law school. It's still a very good law school. And if you want to study Native American law, if that's what you want to practice, I can't think of any other law school in the country that's going to better prepare you for that. Native American law is one of their specialty emphases. So when you start researching schools, in addition to going for those sort of big top 10, top 15, sometimes a second-tier school or even a third-tier school that is teaching exactly what you want to learn, that's where you should be. Right? That's where you should be. U.S. News and World rankings began. And if anyone is interested, there's a fascinating article in the New York Times this past weekend about how bogus the U.S. News and World rankings can be, but that's a whole other story for another day. You absolutely, as soon as possible, want to start talking with your faculty members who are in the field you want to go into. They will not only know schools that, they will have a sense of specialty areas in schools, but they will also know, so for example, you want to study Victorian crime fiction, you had best go to UT Austin because the preeminent researcher in that area studies that. Your faculty will know who the big names are in the field, and this is particularly important in research fields rather than professional fields. talk to your faculty members, find out who would you want to study with, who would they recommend you study with. And then the other thing is you're doing research, you're undergraduates, right? You're reading people's books. Is there someone whose work just speaks to you, and that's who you know you have to go study with? Right? Dr. Ramsey, as an undergraduate, ran across a book by a philosopher named Calvin O'Shrog. It blew his brain apart, and he was like, I am going to study with this man. Right? Purdue was not one of the top-ranked philosophy programs in the country, but he so much wanted to study with this particular person, that's where he went. So there's a couple of factors that can go into your decision on which schools you want to approach. So again, how are you going to research these schools? Well, you're going to speak with your faculty members, your mentors, and hopefully the people who are going to be recommending you. There are a number of websites, and I'm going to try to load this onto one of the computers in the Barrett suite so that the hyperlinks will come up for you right there. I know they can be a little hard to follow. But again, U.S. News and World, in addition to their undergraduate rankings, does have graduate rankings in particular areas. Right? Again, those are worth taking a look at. This is something undergraduates aren't familiar with, and there's no reason they should be. Most people don't become familiar with these things until they become professionals in the field. But every single profession has a professional organization. I teach in the Communication Studies program, and my national organization is the National Communication Association. They're the professional organization, and their job is to hold conferences, tell people best practices in the field. But one of the things almost every professional organization does is very clearly lay out for you the path to becoming a member of that field. So the one I have up here is the Occupational Therapy Association. And one of the things professional organizations often do also is rank programs throughout the country. Right, so again, for those of you, especially in forensics, Kathy, I'm thinking this, whatever, I don't even know what the National Forensic Professional Association is.
Yeah, I don't know, like UC Davis had a mastery.
Oh, okay.
So I know for sure, and I think there's a place for it.
Just start typing in like National Association of Forensic Experts. We're going to hit their professional organization, and then we may find more information on the different programs that are out there and what it is they offer. Remind me again, what are you thinking of for after undergraduate?
Neuropsychology.
Fantastic. Oddly enough, too, I would like everyone to just circle this career services link. A lot of people think in their head, well, I'm going on for more professional training, I'm not going into a career. There are a wealth of resources on the career services website. Go to the ASU Career Services website, do the drop-down menu that says student, and you'll see one there that says graduate school. And they've got some nice resources available to you there. All right. So whether you're going for a research degree, med school, law school, vet school, whatever, odds are pretty good that this is what the application packet is going to contain. And now you want to start slowly but surely thinking about each element of this. The school will have an individual application form, and they'll ask for a certain fee for you to apply to it. So there's that. They're all going to ask to see your transcripts. And then they're all going to ask to see either a resume or what we call a CV, a curriculum vitae. All right, we're going to do the workshop on resumes in a couple of weeks, and this curriculum vitae is more a sort of, especially for those of you going into research areas, it focuses a little bit more on things like conference papers, presentations, teaching experience. What they're going to be looking for on your resume and your CV, especially for med school and a little bit less so for law school, have you been out getting some kind of experience in the field? Have you been shadowing? Have you been volunteering at a hospital or at a doctor's office? Were you a member of some sort of undergraduate, something like the Barrett-Mayo partnership? So when you think about your resume as it's going to go off to a grad school, think about the things you're doing right now as an undergraduate that demonstrate that you've already started taking steps into that field, right? So for Donna, for you, I'm thinking we want to sort of gather up all the art projects that you've worked on, the sorts of things you do. Maybe at some point, we're gonna, for your senior project, we're gonna talk about it having been exhibited among the senior projects. Because every graduate school, no matter what the type, is extremely nervous about the undergraduate application that says, ever since I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a lawyer. Okay, but you have nothing in your packet that suggests you've ever stood inside a lawyer's office or in a courtroom or dealt in any way with the legal system. So one of the things to try and find some space for on your undergraduate schedule is some kind of experience linked to where you want to go. Because the student who writes to a law school and says, I just really know I want to be a lawyer, but there's nothing else to say there. Versus the student who says, I've always wanted to be a lawyer and I served an internship with the county prosecutor's office. And even after I saw close up and personal the hell that is a municipal courtroom, I still want to go to law school. And now that application says, okay, this person is coming in with their eyes wide open. They're always very nervous about people who want to go to med school who've like never seen blood. Right? You know, they're passing out the first week that you're in med school. So again, these don't need to be long and elaborate, but start thinking now, what kinds of experiences can you get while you're still an undergraduate that are going to say to a future acceptance committee, I'm coming in with my eyes wide open. I know what I'm getting into. Depending on the field you're going into, almost every single one has some sort of examination you're going to have to sit through. Whether that's the GRE for liberal arts or science graduate work, the MCAT for medical school, the LSAT for law school, the GMAT for, I forget, professional school for MBA, right, PCA, etc. We'll talk about the grad exams in just a moment. You're going to need letters of recommendation, and I'll talk about those in just a moment. And everyone's going to have to write a personal statement or a letter of intent, why I want to come to your program. They get a whole separate workshop devoted to them. We'll be doing those in about 3 or 4 weeks, because what starts to have, just one thing I'll say for right now, you're putting together this packet to apply for your graduate school, and a lot of it feels very technical. Here's my MCAT score, here's my resume, here's my transcripts. There's lots of numbers and there's lots of data. And the admission committee is still asking themselves, who are you? Like, can we get any sense of who you are personally and why this is important to you? And the letter of intent or the personal statement is where we tell them that. It's a tough letter to write, right? But come to the workshop for that and we'll show you how to get that effectively started. Occasionally, they may ask for a writing sample, not for med school, not for law school. Donna, for you, they'll probably ask to see a portfolio, some sample work. Probably not for psych either. So I'm not going to bother to talk about that for right now. But here, I will. One more thing. You're all going to be doing a Barrett Honors thesis. So one of the things to start thinking about now is, what do you want that thesis to do? It's more than sufficient if all your honors thesis does is graduate you from Barrett, and you can put on your resume, Barrett, the Honors College. But also think a little bit, could your senior thesis in any way give you research experience that we can then put into your application? Can it in some way be turned into maybe a potential conference paper? You want to become a history professor. Boy, it'd be super great if that senior honors thesis did some original historical research, and we're going to send it off to a student conference, things like that. So your Barrett honors thesis is more than fine if all it does is graduate you from Barrett, but you might also start thinking about how could it be turnkeyed into this larger application that you're doing. Depending on where you're going for grad school, you're either going to apply school by school by school by school to their own websites and their own programs. Or if you're going in certain areas, there is a single site. and heaven help you, you must use it, all right? And it can get a little pricey, and it's annoying, all right? But they give you lots of tutorials on how to use it. I just want to give you the heads up now that you're going to be using a single consolidated site. So here's what they look like, all right? I would at this point go ahead and find the one for your professional field. The LSAC is for people applying to law school, and everyone applying to law school applies through this interface. The PharmCAS is for everyone going to pharmacy school, and everyone applies through this interface. And there's the one for medical school. Not a bad idea now to go ahead and bookmark this and start reading through it. Because again, there's a couple of stages to the process of loading all your material up there for prospective schools. The sooner you kind of have a sense of what they're going to be asking you for, the more effective you'll be able to do. All right, let's talk just for a quick minute about funding graduate school. One of the things this is my greatest heartbreak about being an American, is that in the last 30 years, this country's made it as difficult as possible for people to go on to professions and be really good at them. The idea of going 60, 80, 120, $250,000 in debt to earn a degree, a graduate degree, I would ask everyone to just make sure you take a little bit of time and weigh the costs and the benefits of different ways of going to graduate school. The sort of big nightmare story we keep hearing is people coming out of law school having trouble finding work and having something like $250,000 worth of debt. I just want you, and there's other ways for us to talk about this in more detail, but I just want you to think carefully, how much debt are you willing to acquire to get into the field you want? Medicine is still one of the areas where it's kind of like, whatever. Doctors are still getting hired, doctors are still making fabulous amounts of money, and they will eventually get those debts paid off. But if you're thinking of law school or you're thinking of a research degree, and Kathy, in your case, we want to know, given the cost of a particular program, and this is where you go out and find, what does a forensic scientist make?
Yeah.
Right, and this is really, it seems like a stupid question, but it's a good thing to know at this point. What does a psychologist researcher make? And if the answer is $65,000 a year, and you've got $350,000 worth of school debt, it's like, wait, what? All right, so just start thinking a little bit about what it's going to cost. Also think too about in-state versus out-of-state tuition. All right, for a lot of you, ASU and U of A offer very good programs that will land you out in the field doing what you want, and they will cost a whole lot less, right, than going to school out of state. You can start looking into loan possibilities. Again, I'm like, right, the least amount of loan you can take out, the happier I will be for you. Scholarships, fellowships, those are available for med school and law school, but especially for people who are going on for research degrees. The traditional way you went through a master's and a PhD program, this is how I did it. You taught freshman composition or freshman something. You got a meager teaching stipend for it, enough to afford ramen noodles in a really crummy apartment somewhere. But all your tuition costs were waived. So you were in effect, because of that teaching or graduate assistantship, you were living lean now, knowing that on the outside you would leave graduate school with very little debt. One of the things that has started to happen is more and more universities are offering master's and PhD research degrees without the accompanying teaching assistantship or research assistantship, which leaves you accruing $30,000, $60,000 worth of debt for a master's degree. Really look into ways they've already got in their program that they'll fund you with an assistantship and waive your tuition. Many people work in fields where after you work there for a few years, you can get workplace compensation for graduate school. Odds are, though, this is very often for an MBA. They want you to go into an area that's related to what they're doing. And if any of you have done service, all right, look into GI Bill benefits as well. All right, those can help with graduate school. So some costs to start anticipating. To use those big major monster sites, there's a fee. And then there's an additional fee per school that you have that information sent out to. Med school right now is $160 just to get onto that interface. And then I think the cost now is $38 per school after that. Law school, $160, and this ranges $60 to $100 per school. But one of the things is, if you're at a certain income level, these fees can be waived. So it's worth clicking around a bit on those websites and finding where are there waivers right, for the applications fees. This is, no one likes to hear this, but it might be a good idea now to open up a savings account. And that savings account is called applying to graduate school. And you just kind of start putting some money in there, because in addition to the actual fees per school, you're also going to be laying out some money to prepare for those examinations, whether it's the MCAT, the GRE, the LSAT. Let me go forward for a second and I'll come back. The LSAT right now is costing $320 to take, and I don't know if it's reduced if you take it a second time. And I'll be honest, I also don't know if the exam areas charge you per school that they send the scores out to, so you'll want to check that. MCAT's at $305, the PCAT at $210, the GRE is still really affordable at $160, which is great because you're going out to become an English major, which isn't going to pay you any money anyhow. So I guess that's why the GRE is still staying fairly low. So in addition to those other application costs, start thinking about what the exams are going to cost. When should you start studying for the exams? Most people will tell you maybe 8 months out. 8 months out for the LSAT, 8 months out for the MCAT, some will tell you longer. Should you use a paid prep course? Boy, I wish I could just absolutely give you a clear answer on this. I've heard so much conflicting advice from different people who have taken them. If you can afford to take something like the Princeton or the Kaplan exam review, talk to other people who've done it and try and get a sense if they thought it was helpful or not. There are a number, just go down to Barnes & Noble, there's a number of excellent study guides you can buy to prepare for the LSAT or the MCAT. The one thing I will tell you is be ultra sure that the study guide you buy explicitly says that the questions inside of it are taken from the LSAT or the MCAT. There's a lot of people out there making money on LSAT and MCAT prep guides that actually aren't as useful as they might be, because they're pacing you through questions that you're not really going to see on the actual version of the exam. So if you buy one of those study guides, really read it closely and try and see where they say, yes, this is absolutely taken from the current exam and this is what it's going to do. A lot of people report excellent success in forming a study group. Right, we have 2 students who just got into graduate school who, I want to say, for the 6 months prior to the GRE, studied twice a week over in the Barrett Suite. And they just sat there together, and it made the studying so much less of a grind. It was more fun to be with the other person. They clarified each other's thinking. So especially too for the MCAT and the LSAT, a lot of people report higher grades when they're working in a study group. It keeps everybody on task, right? You help each other out. I do want to point out to you one other resource we have here at ASU. This is the result of your student government who managed to get this in place. And again, you'll find this on the Career Services website under graduate school. So what USG has worked out is a situation where they've partnered with the Princeton Review, which is one of the major review programs for these exams. And what you can do, if you want to take the self-paced online version of the exams, you can do so for free. If you want to take the one that's actually held by a group of people, it's only cost you $1,600 as opposed to $2,500. So again, if you can afford to take one of these Princeton prep classes, great. If not, there are still very effective ways to study for those exams, either with that self-paced online, in a group, with study guides. And again, if you belong to one of the undergraduate pre-law or pre-med programs, do any of you guys belong to those? Do you belong to any of the clubs? Great, okay, we want to get you into those clubs as quickly as possible because they're going to have even more advice on how to best prepare for the exams. And the other great thing here too is just talk to your classmates. Talk to upperclassmen who have already gone through the MCAT or the LSAT. If you don't know any of them, I can happily introduce you to them, right? And they can give you some sense of what it feels like to sit for the exam. There are also a million resources like this out on the web. Just start dialing in. So this guy is how I scored 180 on the LSAT, which is a perfect score on the LSAT. There are many, many, many testimonials like this out there. Just start looking them up and you'll see advice from people who've already gone through the exams, right, that they would give you much, much more than I could since I took the GRE 30 years ago. I don't know much about it, except that it was in the basement of the library and there was no heat. So. All right. So we've done big parts of the application packet, preparing for the exam. Now let's talk a little bit about letters of recommendation. Your letters of recommendation are going to be a key part of the packet. Because again, outside of your personal statement, they're the only thing that tells the admission committee something about you as a unique human being. It's the only sort of non-data stuff that's in the application. So this is a no-brainer, but I'll just go ahead and say it. How do you get excellent letters of recommendation? You become the kind of student that faculty want to write letters for. Just, you come to class and you ask questions and you work really hard and, I'll just go ahead and say it. So while you're here, let's do everything we can to make you the kind of student that when you approach a faculty member and you say, can you write me a letter of recommendation? They're like, yeah, no, it'll be easy. You want it to be easy for them. All right, so how do we make it easy? First, you start getting to know your faculty members. This is one of the reasons Barrett doesn't smile much upon online classes, right? One of the reasons we want you in face-to-face classrooms is so that faculty members know who you are. Right? I have a student right now who I'm a little concerned. She did as much of her major online as she could. Now when it came time not only to do her senior thesis, but also to get letters of recommendation for grad school, there weren't many people who knew her. And some of the classes she had taken in Tempe had 300 and 400 students in them. So one of the real benefits of being in Barrett, but even more so being at West, you got plenty of opportunity to get to know your faculty members in fairly small classrooms or lab situations or through Inquire projects or through your enrichment contracts. That's the other thing the enrichment contract is designed for. Hi, I'm going to be in your office a lot this semester and we're going to be working on this together. And in the course of it, I'm going to show you I'm really excited about this and I'm a really hard worker and I make my deadlines and da-da-da-da. Bingo, recommender. All right, so that's a lot of the Barrett curriculum is designed so that you're cultivating those relationships with faculty members. Who do you want to work with? All right, a couple of notes here. For those of you going on to medical school, I would try my best to work with tenure track faculty. These are assistant, associate, or full professors, and odds are they are researchers in their field. If you are going on for a research degree, you want a master's and a PhD in political science, again, try your best to work with tenure track faculty, assistant, associate, and full professors. And the reason for that is those people are researchers in the field. Their names are known in the field. And when a letter of recommendation comes in, right, from Patricia Friedrichsen, who's one of the most well-known linguists in the United States, and you're applying for a linguist program, fantastic, it carries that much more weight. Now, for law school, they're not as strict about this. For law school, if you're getting letters that are also coming in from people like myself who are lecturers don't do research. Lecturers, instructors, not so big a deal because people wouldn't recognize our names anyway. Right? If you've got, for law school, if you work in a law firm, by all means, get one of the lawyers to write you a letter of recommendation. So as you're sort of cultivating these relationships with faculty, just think about their reputations and their status in the profession, and that can sort of help you. I don't want to say, oh my gosh, drop all your enrichment contracts with people who are lecturers. They can still write you extremely strong letters, but let's see, especially for med school, if we can get a couple of research people into that as well. And then again, for med school, for law school, for forensics, maybe it would be fabulous to have a letter from someone who was an actual practitioner in the field. Because a letter for law school from a medical doctor says, look, I do this 60 hours a week. I know what it takes to be successful, and I'll attest that this person will be successful at it. So a mix of research, a mix of professors and people out in the field. All right, how do you ask for a letter of recommendation? And this is useful not just for grad school, but for scholarships and things like that. The first thing you do is, and I usually do this by, suggest students do this by email, send the professor or the recommender a brief email. Hi, this is so-and-so from your so-and-so class. I was wondering, I'm in the process of beginning to apply to law school. Would you be able to write me a strong letter of recommendation? And I would ask strong letter of recommendation for this reason. No one should agree to write for you unless they can write a strong letter. But sometimes faculty members are sort of running 7 ways to Sunday, and you're like, could you write me a letter of recommendation? And they're like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And then when they sit down to do it, they realize like they really can't praise you to the heavens as highly as they maybe should. And now you get a kind of lukewarm or a tepid letter of recommendation. So what I always say to students is approach a faculty member and say, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? And they'll either say, yeah, no problem, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Or they'll go, I don't know if I can write you as strong a letter as you want. In which case you say, thank you very much, and you approach someone else. But because you've been cultivating these relationships already, you're not going to run into this situation. So how do you ask a faculty member for a letter of recommendation? Here's one from a former student. Good afternoon, Dr. Gruber. I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to ask if you are willing and able to write a strong letter of recommendation on my behalf for my applications to graduate programs. I am asking because your instruction has deeply informed and influenced my education. Okay, whatever. I can meet during your office hours next week or at another convenient time to discuss the matter further if you wish. I'm willing to provide whatever materials or assistance that you deem appropriate. Thank you. This is the initial contact. Can you write me the strong letter? You bet. All right, now how do we make it even easier for them? Don't make them go looking through their file cabinet at old rosters and digging up old emails from the class. You, in effect, present them everything they need to write a detailed letter of recommendation for you. So what classes did you have together? Send them your resume, remind them of previous work that you've done. You're going to be writing this personal statement. Make sure you give that to them also. Give them at least 6 to 8 weeks lead time. all right? And if submission instructions, some places will say, have them send it here, just make sure they know that. The reason you're giving them all this is that you're jogging their memory. And a letter that comes in from a faculty member, and I just wrote one of these. I've known so-and-so since her first semester here as a freshman. She was in my human event class. Already at that point, she was doing this type of writing. I next had her in this class where her conversation was da-da-da-da-da. Recently, I worked with her on her Inquire project. I didn't have to go sifting through all my stuff to gather that up. The student gave it to me, and what that meant was it made it easier for me to write the letter. I wrote it more quickly, and the letter is chock full of the kind of specific detail that an admissions committee is looking for. The letter that just kind of goes, yeah, you know, they're a good student. Yeah, phew, yeah, really, top student. They can't do anything with that, all right? The letter that says for their senior honors thesis, which I'm directing, they're looking at this and they're looking at that, all of which is related to do, right? You want them to be able to write as detailed a letter for you as possible. So here was the second. The first one was just, could I write the letter? Here was the second. Attached are several documents to aid you in the writing of the letter of recommendation. The Aesthetics and Society final is the final write-up for our photography course. Interrogation of the fundamental truth is the Marks and Thoreau paper for HON 272, my resume, and my personal statement. Over the course of my time at ASU, I've taken the following classes with you, and note also they've put the semester, so it's super easy for me. Oh, well, the student just tells me what they got. Okay, in all the classes, all right, and then a nice sort of friendly closing. Okay, so for all your letters of recommendation, not just grad school, for things like scholarships, internships, whatever, just make it as easy for the faculty member as you can. When you apply to graduate school, somewhere along the way you're going to be asked this question. Do you give up the right to see your letters of recommendation? And the answer is always yes. The answer is always yes, I give up the right to see these letters. And the reason for that is, if I'm writing, well, I don't write letters for students that aren't waived, because my understanding of a letter of recommendation is I'm in a confidential conversation with the admissions committee, and I'm saying, here's where the student is really good. If I couldn't have written a strong letter, I wouldn't have agreed to do it. But there's something about knowing that the student's going to read the letter before it goes to the admissions committee that makes people start holding back what they're willing to say. It just doesn't lead to either good letters of recommendation or trustworthy letters of recommendation. Right? So always waive the right to see those letters of recommendation. And I know that feels really weird, like I'm giving up some kind of power and control. It's just the way the process works. Again, we're making things as easy for the recommender as possible. This student knows I can be a bit scatterbrained. So below is a list of the law schools for which I'm applying and their due dates. Oh, thanks. All right, now I don't have to go looking it up. It's right here in this email. I'll have all my materials entered in the LSAC system by December 30. You should then receive notification from them on submitting the letter. And this is the part where the student's letting me know how I submit the letter. I'm going to get notification from LSAC. I'm going to load all my stuff up there. Please let me know if you have any trouble with the February 1 deadline. Again, you're just making it as easy for the faculty member as possible. All right, I'm not going to worry about writing sample. All right, so a couple of those of you, we want to get you into these organizations as quickly as possible. So you're just going to go to the ASU website and you're going to type in pre-law. And that's going to take you to this website that talks about pre-law resources here at ASU. And then, same thing again. We're going to do the same thing for they don't call it pre-med anymore, they're calling it pre-health now. All right, so pre-health resources that are here at ASU. And then I also would like you, this is bizarre, to go to the USG, the student government webpage, and just type in like pre-health, pre-med, under student groups, and see, in addition to these more sort of official resources, are there student chapters or student clubs or student organizations here in ASU and hopefully on the West Campus, right, that are already getting people set. And what's great about those kinds of student clubs is they're always bringing in speakers and people who are out there in the field who can help you start preparing. All right, so by way of sort of wrapping this up, and again, I know I've just thrown so much information at you, and I'll give you a chance to ask questions in just a second. What I would sort of do is look out into the far, far, far future first, and then the more sort of mid-range future, and then the sort of now future, right now. Start getting a really good sense of what people in the field do. And I know especially for things like law, it can be very abstract, like I just know I want to be a lawyer. Really start trying to find out now, what's a typical day like for a lawyer? What do they love about their jobs? What don't they love about their jobs? I'll give you another little hint here. Career Services has a fabulous shadowing program. Again, go to the Career Service webpage. They set up a whole thing where just for a morning or an afternoon, you can go spend the day with a professional working in the field, all right, and get some kind of close-up look of what's going on. The other thing you can do, and this is a little bit underhanded, don't tell people I told you. People love to talk to undergraduates about what they do for a living. So you can always say, you know, I'm in a class right now where we're researching careers in forensics. And one of our assignments is to interview a professional in the field. May I have an hour of your time and buy you a cup of coffee? A lot of times people go, oh, I'd love to, but I'm really busy. You'd be surprised how many times people go, yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. Helping out an undergraduate, talking about myself, right? Then there's plenty of reasons for them to do it. So think about either the shadowing through Career Services or just asking for people for an hour or so of their time. Then we want to come back a little bit. What is grad school going to entail? For law school and med school especially, I would start doing the research. What's a first-year law student doing versus a second year versus a third year? I must admit, med school remains immensely confusing to me. All right, so what are you doing first year, second year, third year? How does the whole sort of match day thing happen? When does it happen? When are you doing rotations? What does a residency look like? Just so that it's not a big surprise when you get there. Just so that you can start seeing what people do at different stages. Again, those earlier websites I gave you, what are the steps to becoming an X? And now in the sort of very near future, what are you going to be doing right now? Well, you came to this workshop, that's great, all right, that sort of gets the wheels rolling. But a couple of other things, let's keep the GPA as strong as we possibly can, but don't do that thing honor students do. Oh, I got a B, my plans for med school are destroyed. No, they're not. Lots of people go to med school with B's, all right, we'll see. So don't keep the GPA up, don't obsess over it. Make sure you're doing whatever required coursework. For law school, I don't think it matters so much. For psychology, it might. For med school, it absolutely matters. There are classes they're going to want to know you took as an undergraduate. So everybody just kind of take a look at what the field is going to require in your undergraduate coursework. Someone just explained this to me the other day. Med school wants you to have physics because you've got to know like how many cc's go up and down that little tube. I was like, but they're not doing space travel. Why do they have to have physics? But it turns out there's a very good reason. What kind of internships can we do now? Or it doesn't have to be a formal internship. You could volunteer somewhere to start getting close-up experiences of what the field does. Like I just talked about shadowing and interviewing. Another reason to join these student organizations is they're going to hold these events and you're going to get the opportunity to network. Introduce yourself to people, meet different people. This is another good reason to attend any Barrett events that have speakers coming in who are working in the field, or alumni who are working in the field, because you're just having a conversation with someone while you're eating one of those little chickens on a stick, and they go, what do you want to do? And you say, oh, I'd like to become a clinical researcher in psychology. They go, oh my gosh, why are you in so-and-so's lab? I mean, you'd be surprised how quickly connections can be made in those sorts of situations. Some of you are in majors that actually have a specific career prep course. Kathy, did you take Bio 393?
No.
Did you, Ayana? Okay, we should look to see, because I think for people headed for med school, this class may in fact be designed, it may be like a 1-credit class designed to start giving you even more detail on what I gave you today. I don't think there's one in law. I don't think there's a pre-law prep class. All right, again, one of the reasons you're in Barrett is so that you can take advantage of the Barrett opportunities. Barrett has its own internships. All of these are off the main Barrett page. Barrett has its own pre-health organization, aside from the larger pre-health stuff that's going on at ASU. Barrett has its own pre-law. Project Excellence is an initiative between Sandra Day O'Connor Law School and Barrett, where Barrett students can take law classes at Sandra Day O'Connor. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. And if you do well in it, and no one's expecting you to like ace it, they're hard classes, but if you can apply to law school going, I've already taken law classes, that's fantastic. All right, and then Barrett also has a link to its own sort of research opportunities. All right, for people to take a look at too. So make sure you go to those websites. All right, so again, that's a huge amount to throw at you really quickly. Start planning now. Start sort of thinking into the future, so nothing is either a surprise or feels like a crunch, right? So for law school, med school, figure out when you're going to sit for those exams and then back yourself out from them. You don't want to do the sort of thing where you're like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the summer of my junior year, I need to sit for the LSAT in 3 weeks if I'm going to get my applications in on time to go right on to law school. Really sort of back the whole calendar out so that there's no surprises and everything becomes manageable. And then the last thing I'll say is we've been giving some version of this workshop for 10 years now. And basically we now have students in all of those degrees I showed you up at the beginning. They're all out there working in those areas and doing those sorts of things. Okay, that's an enormous amount of information to throw at you really, really quickly. What questions do people have? What can I clarify? Sometimes too, when you're as familiar with all of this as I am, you're just using language and you're anticipating everyone's like, oh yeah, sure, I know what that is. Anything I talked about that people are like, I'm not quite sure what that is. So I would love for all of you thinking about law school and med school. Let's get you cooked up with those student groups.
Okay, you know, like for med school, like I know that they want letters of recommendation from the sciences, but could we also have ones that are outside? Because the major isn't typical med school.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes. And so the thing, especially if you were outside of the sciences as a med school major, all the more reason to make sure you got those classes down that they want. And it would be great to have a letter from one of the science faculty. But if you're, what's your major?
Women and gender studies.
Fantastic. And are you developing any relationships with any of the faculty there?
Yeah, I'm working with Dr. Foz on empire stuff.
Fantastic. So she's going to be working closely with you. She'll be able to write a very detailed, fantastic letter on your behalf. And then to that particular combination, I would love if someone who's a practitioner could write on your behalf. So if we can get you into a shadowing opportunity or an internship opportunity, and then you've got a science person, a liberal arts person, and a practitioner, that's a nice, really well-rounded set of letters of recommendation.
route would you suggest, like, setting up to take your first exam? Because I know the LSAT, I believe it's only offered like 3 times a year. Because like I have one friend in law school at Sandra Day, and he told me, just sign up and take it, study if you can, see how it goes, and then study after and take it again. If you have the money to do that, I don't know.
So there's conflicting advice on
Yeah.
that, and I wish, that's another one of those things, like the prep courses, I wish I could go, yes, do this. Some people will tell you, there's not much change before a first and second LSAT, unless you do a lot of prep, to which my feeling is, why not do the prep on the front end and kind of see what happens? And if you nail it where you want it, then you don't even have to worry about taking it a second time. So where are you right now in your program? Are you,
I'm a semester ahead, so I'm a second semester junior. I'll be graduating next December.
you're graduating next December, December of 2017.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic, you're right where you should be. So my recommendation is, now, are you planning to apply to law schools when will you apply to law school?
I want to start law school in fall of 2018, so take that semester of the spring off.
Fantastic, it's a great question. So here's what I would do, and you can see how all the pieces of the puzzle start to come together. Here's the law schools I'm interested in, here's their deadline dates. Now, if I back out 6 to 8 weeks from that for my letters of recommendation, and I back out from that far enough for my LSAT, so that but then I back out far enough from that to study for it. So it feels to me, my understanding is law school applications start going out like in October, November, and then deadlines are usually early December, but we should double check that. Which feels to me that if you began studying, and you don't want to overstudy for these, like don't start tomorrow, you'll be so burned out by the time the exam comes. But if you were to begin studying, say in like February, and do they have an early summer one or a midsummer one?
I know there's one in the summer, I'm not sure when it is.
Let's find out the dates on that. And then you could very comfortably say, I'm taking the one in July, I'm going to start studying like in January, do this. If it's great, my LSAT's good to go, I don't need to worry anymore, let me get the rest of my application packet together. That would be my advice. Just because I'm surprised when you go to some of these websites, how I scored 180 on the LSAT, there's some very interesting advice there that doesn't have anything to do with spending $2,500 for the Kaplan prep. So read a little bit of that, and I think that'll help you make the decision on how far out you want to back it up. Yeah. Other questions?
That was a good question.
If you're feeling extremely overwhelmed, it's okay. It'll alleviate, it'll abate over the next day or two. And now you can just tell yourself like, okay, got it, know what needs to start happening, and you can slowly but surely start putting the pieces in place. Go buy that 3-ring binder, put this in it, all right, and check your notes, and we just kind of get the process started slowly with enough time for you to do well. I'm always available, my office is in the Barrett Suite, for people to just kind of stop by and ask for further clarification. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for attending.